All right.
Wow. I'm impressed. Okay. Let me do the introduction. Whoa. That was good. That was really good. Okay. So today we have a guest from Huge. They will talk about Shreddit, how they moved from SharePoint to DA. So this is really a migration story. Because Shreddit recently completed its migration from SharePoint to AEM DA, and this session will definitely discuss the real-world experience and proven strategies. So we will welcome Eric and Sean from Huge, and of course Chris from Adobe, our DA expert, and they will share practical insights from the project, of course, and from DA. So technical approaches, migration strategies, the minus and the plus, and the big failures and the big successes, and some dogs maybe we see from Sean. So we have the full. Maybe I can also get my dog. That's wonderful. So yeah. I would say I give the stage to Eric or Sean, whoever will start, and please do a
Yeah,
short introduction. And
absolutely. I just want to also point out to anyone that's watching, log into YouTube to ask questions during the live stream, and we'll throw them up, and we'll get your questions answered. So there we go.
Perfect. Thank you. Hey, everyone. Eric Van Geem. I'm a technical architect at a company called Huge. I've been working with AEM for 11 years now, Edge Delivery Services for the past couple of years. Huge is an Adobe partner specializing in AEM, AEP, and other experience cloud solutions. We also provide a lot of strategic, creative, and design services. And I am joined here by my esteemed colleague, Sean. Sean, you want to give an intro?
Hi, Sean McAuliffe. I'm here in New Jersey. I'm a director of UI engineering here at Huge. I've been at Huge and the different agencies that have become Huge for about 9 years and work closely with Eric. I've been doing AEM forever and EDS for the past few years with Eric and really enjoying it. So excited to talk to you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are delighted to have you guys. Do you want me to put your content up on screen, or you want to jump right into it? All right.
Do that. Great. Thank you, Ron. So we are here to talk about how we migrated an Edge delivery site, which is what you see on the screen here, shreddit.com, from SharePoint-based authoring over to DA, and how we planned the migration in hopes that this will help anyone else planning to do a similar migration. So I'm going to walk through some key things you need to do for a DA migration, but you can find all the migration details on docs.da.live. We'll also talk about some other things to consider, what to watch out for, and some unique things that we faced in the migration. And at the end, I'll show a quick demo of a DA app that we created to help with the migration. So a little background on Shreddit.com first. Shreddit is a branded solution owned by a company called Stericycle, recently acquired by WM, or Waste Management. Shreddit offers paper shredding services and document destruction with physical locations across the globe. They have an international presence with multilingual, multi-regional sites in AEM. Their shreddit.com/ENUS site was recently migrated to Edge Delivery Services using SharePoint-based authoring with the help of Adobe through their VIP program. And these are content-heavy sites with a lot of forms usage. They are an AEM Forms customer. So currently Excel-based spreadsheets are used to create authourable forms on the site. Once the site launched on Edge Delivery earlier this year, DA had already been gaining a lot of traction and hype in the community, thanks to folks like Chris Millar and everyone else on the DA team at Adobe. So Sean and I saw an opportunity to migrate shreddit.com/ENUS from SharePoint over to DA so that their authors can take advantage of the powerful CMS features that DA offers over SharePoint, such as the universal editor integration. Then we can continue to migrate more of their traditional AEM cloud sites onto Edge Delivery directly into DA. So that's the background. Now we'll talk about how to plan and approach the migration.
Can I want to interrupt you because I have a bunch of questions actually. Mostly, so was this a decision that you guys took from an engineering point of view, or was this like responding to challenges, or like how exactly did this come about? And I had a couple of pre-prepared. You were kind of going into a really great spiel, so I didn't want to interrupt you, but I have a lot of like questions about, because other people, they might be on SharePoint and it's like, oh, I'm about to hear the hows, but I want to know more the whys. And so that's kind of where was this their idea, this your idea? If it was your idea, like how did the customer take this? Like, hey, we're going to move you. And, so how did that go down?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a little bit of both. We saw that, we've known this customer for about 5 years now. We actually migrated all of their other sites from a previous legacy CMS onto AEM Cloud about 5 years ago. They were very much Team WYSIWYG, so they're very used to the page editor. So moving onto Edge Delivery with SharePoint-based authoring was quite a change for them. It was a welcome change. They did love the speed and simplicity of document-based authoring, but they did yearn for some of those features that they did no longer get with SharePoint-based authoring, such as the universal editor or just more powerful CMS-like features. So Sean and I, we saw all of the hype and all the capabilities that DA showed, and we took that to the customer to say, hey, we have an idea. Adobe's working on this great new product. We think this will help streamline your authoring workflows and still get that great Edge delivery experience that you have now. So we proposed the idea to them, and they loved it. So we just went ahead and did it.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, as soon as they saw DA, really the first step is we just demoed it to them because we wanted them to see it. And they immediately were like, oh, we need this.
Okay. So it was,
and that's honest feedback from them. Like they were like, this is better than SharePoint. We want to do this.
Okay. Yeah, we've seen some customers. We've kind of seen a blend of customers where some customers are immediately like, this is amazing. How much effort is it going to take?
Right.
And or we don't see a ton of value. It just looks like SharePoint. If you're not giving us if you're still giving us a document, we're looking for maybe more WYSIWYG, and it's like, okay, well, you've got universal editor here. Yeah. So that's good to know that it was a little bit of both.
What I think is interesting about that, and I won't take too much time, Eric, but having them start in SharePoint, it was a very easy sell, I think, to show them DA and say, oh wow, this is a big improvement. I would be curious to go from traditional AEM where they were used to, and kind of show them DA and see what the reaction is, because they're also very interested in universal editor.
Got it. Yeah. Okay, so that's great, and really, I mean, that was kind of the thing that we said when we brought UE to DA was like, hey, if you have some people that want UE, you're no longer like, oh, this is going to be rough for you to have like 2 projects, and how do you do this? Like, you can truly have whichever editor you want and the same sort of experience. I'm curious. So Eric, I'll let you get into your next piece, but I'm curious, like when you all made the decision to, like, how long was it from, okay, I'm going to start importing pages into DA to having a page that you could actually look at and say, this almost looks like what we're doing?
It was pretty simple. Like using the DA bulk importer app, we were able to bring in all their pages from SharePoint into DA within a matter of seconds, which I actually plan to show a little bit later on, and just being able to see what the site looks like and quickly identify what features might need to be worked on to make it compatible with DA.
Cool. All right. So I'll let you take over and show us how it's done.
Sounds good. Thank you for the questions. So to start planning this migration, we needed to like determine the project scope, the level of effort, and the list of tasks needed to do this. I'm going to switch over to my presentation tab here just so you can see some notes that I have. And really, like, assessing the migration scope involves a couple of things. As I was just mentioning, you want to take a content inventory and create a test plan. We used the Helix admin APIs to give us the list of previewed and published content. In our case, we're migrating the EN US regional site of shredded.com, which is about 700 pages. You also just want to understand how much regression testing is needed. A DA migration is mostly QA regression effort than it is dev effort. In our case, our testing was focused mostly on ensuring that form submissions were still working as well as other key features. Next thing you want to do is review the upgrade documentation. There's a lot of great documentation on docs.da.live. I won't go through all of this in detail, but there are just a couple of things worth calling out. Protecting your content. Whenever you import your content into DA, you want to make sure that you lock down your folders since they are public by default. You also just need to add a small code snippet to your scripts.js to enable the fancy DA live preview, which appears directly next to your document interface. That was another feature that our customer loved. There's a couple of slight HTML differences on a SharePoint-based site versus a DA-based site. We'll touch more on that shortly. Similarly with the query index.json endpoints, there are some differences there as well, which will need some dev attention. So we're going to touch more on that soon as well. And for us, this was relevant for us. Spreadsheets, DA sheet editor is not meant to be an Excel replacement. If you have use cases that specifically call for Microsoft Excel and SharePoint, which was the case for Shreddit since they are using authorizable forms where they have some fields that are dynamically calculated based on Excel functions, there are some use cases where you might still be in SharePoint for those. Great, switching back. And you also want to decide on an upgrade strategy. Again, I won't go into too much detail on this, but essentially there is the FS tab swap or the origin swap approach. Each has their own pros and cons as listed here. Basically, the FS tab swap involves updating the site configuration of your current site, and the origin swap involves creating a new repo list site and deploying a CDN config change to reference that new origin URL. We chose the origin swap approach due to Shreddit still being a user of Excel for authorizable forms, which will remain in SharePoint. And in our case, we're using Adobe's Fastly CDN to stitch the two edge delivery origin URLs together under the same URL domain. Okay, and then last, you want to do a initial site setup and content import into the new site so that you can quickly identify any issues that need to be fixed. Let's move into a couple of setup tasks that you need to consider.
Real quick.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you were, instead of doing content overlay, which I think you'll maybe get into, it sounds like you chose to stitch the two together at the CDN level. What made you decide to go that route instead of using the content overlay?
Yeah, it felt less, how do I want to say, risky.
Okay.
I like the idea of just having a whole new edge delivery site that's completely separated from production, moving all the content over there, doing all the configurations on this new repo list site, and then using the CDN that we have control over because it's Adobe's CDN to route traffic to that new origin on the day of go live. So it just made me feel more comfortable that we're going to deliver a seamless go live. I'm sure there's still ways to do it seamlessly with the FS tab approach, but the origin swap approach just set.
No, sorry, I meant the content overlay versus stitching it together. So are you doing another content overlay for commerce or anything, or is it just like you have the two sites, they're kind of freestanding and okay?
Two sites freestanding. Yeah, we're not currently using overlay for Shreddit, but
okay.
As you may know, I'm very familiar with the overlay.
Yeah, that's good to know because I think like with our official documentation, we say like we kind of almost allude to like content overlays the only way to go, and I think your project's really good in saying like, no, you could do if you really want these two freestanding, totally fine, you can do it. Yeah. You know, it's just like poison is not the right word, but pick your poison, if you will, as far as like how you're going to bring these two worlds together. So that's good.
And in the future, we hope to take their forms and move that over to the universal editor so that they don't need a SharePoint instance whatsoever. And then that way we can just eliminate that unused edge delivery site and just have the one DA powered edge delivery site potentially.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's a great question. Couple of initial setup tasks. So you want to create the DA org and site folders in da.live. Then you want to create that new edge delivery repo list site using the Helix admin APIs. On the left here, just a little comparison of what your configs might look like. So on the left here is what your SharePoint config might look like using the admin API. You can essentially copy this whole config and paste that as input into your put request when you're creating the new DA site. And then you just want to make sure that you swap out some values like the content source URL. You want to make sure you're referencing the content DA.live URL instead of your SharePoint URL. And as I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure you configure authentication on your DA org as well. So now that our new DA site is created, we need to perform an initial content import to be able to see what's broken on the site. So to import content into DA, we need to get a list of all content from the original site using the status API from Helix admin. And this restore from AEM documentation here is crucial. There's a lot of good stuff in here of how to call that status API, what flags to pass in, and ultimately what that output will be. Essentially, the output is it'll give you a list of paths in your SharePoint-based site that have been previewed or have been published live. And we're going to use this to use it as import or use it as input into our importer app, which I'll show. And this is actually a good chance, once you have this full list of paths, this is a good chance for you to filter out anything that you don't care about importing, any old redirects or any drafts folders that have a bunch of test content. This is a good chance to just clean that up. You don't need to bring everything over to DA. So you can do that manually, or you can write your own script to filter that out. One other thing to consider is consider pages that exist but are not meant to be published live yet. For example, content authors might still be working on draft pages during your migration project. When you import these pages over, you want to just make sure that you're not prematurely publishing those pages. Maybe they are intended to just stay on preview only or neither. So the status API can again help us with that. When you call the status API, you can pass in this select flag here in your post payload to only give us pages that have been previewed or edited, but not necessarily are live. And so once you have that list of pages, you can bulk import those and preview those, but don't publish them live. Then what we did was we made a second call to the status API to just get all the items from live only. So again, using that select parameter by passing in live, this will give you all the list of pages that have been published live, so that we can safely assume that these are also to be published live from the DA site as well. And I'll just quickly show what that import process looks like. It's really fast. You can import by query index, but in our case, if you're getting all your pages and paths from the status API, it's just easier to do it all by URL. Since you might have some pages that are intentionally hidden from query index. So to make sure that you're not missing those pages, importing by URL is the way to go. So I have a list here that I'm just going to paste in. It's about 900 URLs. It's like 700 pages and 200 redirects. I'm going to select my org to import into. I'm going to make sure that my cores plugin is enabled, since this does make some client-side calls, and I'm going to run import. And this goes surprisingly fast. Like just talking the last couple of seconds, I'm already halfway done. The whole import process from SharePoint into DA is a matter of seconds. So pretty cool. And then the idea is that once this is all imported, then you can do a bulk preview. There's a separate app for doing bulk preview and publish. Then that'll give you like a front end site that you can poke around in and start taking an inventory of all broken features. Again, this is a heavier QA effort to identify what's broken, but that'll ultimately define our list of dev tasks needed to get things working properly on DA. So
can you speak to what were some of the common QA things that you saw? I have kind of my own pet list. Like what were some common themes with things that came back from QA?
Yeah, that's a great segue into Sean's track.
Okay.
Sean's going to highlight some dev tasks that are going to pop up and what you can expect.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. You want me to do that now, Eric?
I'm glad we did the 10 rehearsals for this. This just worked out so well.
Sean, if you want to share your screen, you can. Otherwise, I can just scroll for you here.
I think I can do it. Let me try it. The StreamYard thing is pretty cool. I'm getting used to it. Let me see if I can share. Are you guys? Let's see. I'm hopefully sharing. Yes, there we go. Okay, so this is my cheat sheet here. So yeah, the first thing I want to mention is that everything that Eric is talking about, he pretty much had planned already when we hit this project. So this was very easy to hit the ground and just do the things that needed to be done, which were very minimal, I would say. I mean, there were some things. To your point, Chris, I'm just going to skip some of this stuff. Actually, I'll go back. Oh, one thing I did just want to mention is that the folks who were working on addressing the QA issues found it handy to use the URL option for AEM up, because we could point to different content sources and kind of A/B back and forth, troubleshoot, make sure what we were doing with our new content, look at how it was affecting the old content. Because initially we were like, maybe we should do this in a way that supports both. I will say for the most part, we said, no, let's just support DA, because they're going to move from SharePoint and it's not worth our time. But also when you see the minor differences, you'll know what I mean. But I did want to just mention that was a handy feature of that CLI tool. Mostly it was just those minor differences in markup that kind of broke the contract of our blocks. Our blocks were expecting certain things in certain places. Mostly our nav, we hit an issue where lists in DA, and I think this is better, content is wrapped in a P tag, whereas in SharePoint, you had a somewhat inconsistent, you can see here where I have business services just as like a text node in the LI. So if I go down to show you sort of the difference, I mean, again, this is like simple JavaScript stuff that we were doing, but with SharePoint, because of that, we were looking for node types to kind of identify the pieces of the navigation that we needed to do something with. With DA, we just figured out we had to, because it was consistent, we could switch to looking for a P tag or that sort of thing. Does that make sense? Yep. So a few minor places like that, mostly with the nav because it uses lists extensively. And then I will just point out one, it was kind of an edge case. There was a page on SharePoint that had, this is actually kind of a no-no, I guess you would say. There was a nested block, right? And but imagine this is not intended to be a block and just a table within a block, right? There was a slight difference in how this nested table rendered. Out of DA, it came with just a T body, and with SharePoint, it sent a T head with like a heading. So it differentiated a heading. So just an interesting thing. I don't know if you would ever find that normally, but it was this minor edge case that we had to deal with. So just pointed that out. I think those were really the two main block issues that we hit. Everything else just kind of rendered correctly. The other things that the team had to deal with, and I'd say the bigger things, were the difference in the query index. So just to briefly explain, in the SharePoint version, we had one index file that had different sheets, I guess, or tabs, right, that had different content for different page types, blogs, etc. And so in the SharePoint implementation, we were always calling this query index to get any index information and then passing a query parameter to specify which tab in that, or work, I can't remember what you call them, sheet in the SharePoint we wanted. So we did, that was not supported in DA. So we did have to refactor things. Basically, this involved taking those separate sheets in SharePoint, creating separate indexes for each of those in DA, right? And then we basically just changed in the code where we were calling, and I probably have it up here. We just had like a utility function that would always call one function to fetch query index. And instead of appending that, query parameter to the same file that we always called, we would pass in a new argument to say we want blogs, we want news, we want what have you. Yep. And so that was probably our heavier lift, and the dev work wasn't tough. It was mostly just the regression testing, going back and making sure everything works.
And Chris, I saw your face looking a little confused earlier. And I think what we meant was
Oh, sorry. Did I
Like
miss-
sheets and DA and having tabs within sheets are supported, but specifically around the query index,
Right.
since you don't have a physical sheet in DA that represents your query index, we split that out into different indexes by defining different endpoints. So like query index.json or like blogs index.json or webinars index.json. That's effectively what we did.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. So let me make sure I understand. So when you dump to a sheet in SharePoint or Google Drive, you of course have a physical sheet where you can go add tabs to,
Yep.
whereas really when you have a query index that is like kind of no touchy because it lives in edge delivery, you can't add those tabs. There's no way, even if you were to add additional query index entries, it's still going to create a new sheet. It will not, there's no affordances to create basically multi-sheet is what we call it, with query index. So how did you populate these? These are all formula based then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So then how did you replicate the formulas that you have here? Like how did you replicate this feature? Because I think, especially even for me, we have customers that ask, they're like, hey, we have formulas, what are you going to do about it? And so Eric and Sean, what did you do about it?
Yeah, I can speak to that, and then Sean, if I miss anything, feel free to add on. First, we had to understand just Excel functions in general, just understand what it's doing. In our case, we have in that very bottom left corner, there's like a raw index tab, which has everything. And then Excel functions were used to chunk that out or segment that out into these individual tabs that you see here. So we basically did like a one-to-one mapping of tabs to a new query index definition. So for example, we see shared blogs here. And just by looking at the Excel function, I can see that it's pulling from all pages that have a template metadata value of blog page. And so we're essentially recreating that index rule in Edge Delivery using the admin APIs to create the blogs-index.json with pages under the /blogs or /enus/blogs URL path.
So you were basically able to recreate, I might paraphrase a little bit, but you were able to recreate all of your Excel formulas purely in query index definitions.
Effectively, yes. There are still
Those
some
functions, right.
things to consider. So one challenge we ran into is Excel pre-sorted these fields so that like blogs, for example, like the latest blog is always the first entry. Whereas when we moved this over to DA, that was no longer the case. And we did not find a way to do that pre-sorting on the back end. So we did have to write some sorting logic on the front end to still have that same functionality. So there's a couple nuances there, but effectively we did recreate it.
That's what I was going to mention. I felt like it would have been nice to have that, but we added we just added some JavaScript to sort things the way we needed, and it didn't seem to make a big difference. But it would have been nice, I will say.
Yeah, with DA kind of becoming the more common content provider to Edge Delivery, we're starting to have these conversations about, we got sorting for free from Excel, and even with the one that people don't quite think of is sorting with pagination. It gets very complicated very fast to sort and have pagination. How do you, what is 1 through 1,000? What is 199 through 2,000? And so, and when you think about caching and cache invalidation and all of that, when you do say like offset and you're trying to do sorting, like what does that look like? So that is something we're discussing and trying to figure out what this new world looks like with that. But and right now the answer is, of course, like you can sort client side, as long as it's a reasonable amount of data.
Right.
Coming over the wire, a couple of JSON files coming over the wires is probably not too bad to sort. So good to know.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, we do have local storage caching in place, or session storage caching of these different endpoints, so that every time you refresh a page, you're not having to make that network call again every time. So there's still some performance optimizations
that's really clever. That's really, really clever.
Yeah, and I can't take all the credit for that. Like the Adobe VIP team set up a lot of this for us as well, so we'll have to give kudos to them as well. But
very cool.
Agreed, it's very clever.
Yeah, they did the initial migration to EDS, so they did some clever stuff for sure.
Yep.
Right, so we covered sorting, and then the other thing I'll just add on there is there were some minor field type differences. Like I'm trying to think. Let me turn off this view. For instance, like if you look at the date here on the SharePoint JSON, it's a string versus EDS actually was a true number. So stuff like that.
Yeah, this is another. So it's a good call out. So if you are doing this, and we call this out in our docs, but I'm glad you two were speaking to it. If you look here, you can see tags, and tags is a proper array. And
right.
If you switch to your SharePoint tab, if you wouldn't mind me backseat driving, it's an array looking like a string.
Yes.
So this is interesting because like at first glance you might think that the array is good, and the challenge and the reason why it's a string here is because there is a physical sheet that humans can touch. That content can be made invalid at any time. Somebody could really mess up that string and or that array, and if we're making assumptions about converting that into a strongly typed array, then all of a sudden our service blows up, right, in delivering it to you because we can't parse that data into an array. Whereas now, we all love an array is an array. We love types. Shout out to my Java AEM friends. But that is a difference that you have to account for, because if you're doing like JSON.parse and then all of a sudden it's already a JavaScript object, you're like, what do I do now? So that's a good call out.
Interesting. That's a good point. I did initially think it was better to have the array, I will say, but that's a good point.
It's interesting. We went back and forth, and what's maybe unfortunate is like and this is where just technical debt in general comes from, because the HTML differences is actually a good use case, because what happened is our Crosswalk friends had a bunch of customers go live, and then similarly they had some SharePoint people that were like, hey, we want to move to Crosswalk, and then they found out those differences in HTML. And so the first reaction was, well, let's just go fix Crosswalk to make it exactly like, but we already had Crosswalk customers that were expecting the extra paragraph tags. And so it was like, oh, we just broke them. So all of a sudden, that's where, well, the right thing to do would be to have a standard implementation across everyone. But unfortunately, we have a subset of users that are on one implementation. We have a subset of users on another implementation. What do we do? And in the case of those paragraphs, there's luckily a feature flag you can ask for if you don't want to make those investments to update your code. But it is one of those where it's like there's no perfect answer, because ideally you would standardize, but yet you already have projects in the wild that are expecting a certain thing, and you can't reasonably go say, hey, 100 projects, please go update. So that's a really great call out.
Yeah. Cool. So Eric, I want to get back to your stuff to just make sure we don't run out of time. So I think that covers like kind of the dev work that we did in terms of code changes we didn't need to make. The other stuff was like minor configuration stuff. We enabled the AEM assets integration. We set up our blocks in the library. Previously, we'd had that like in the Sidekick library solution, however that worked in SharePoint. This is one thing I will mention, Chris, that they really liked about DA over SharePoint. Put some templates in there. I'll say an interesting thing of this too was to kind of get across to them that this is, once we have this configured, kind of their thing to, like, they can maintain this. So we're happy to do it for them, but we kind of wanted them to know that you're not dependent on us to do all of this, right? So that was cool. And then we did do one thing. There was a conversation when we showed them initially DA and we showed them the option to go to Universal Editor. They were very excited about this, I will say.
Yep.
And so what we did as kind of a compromise, because we wanted to limit the scope of this project to not balloon into us going and making all our blocks support this, right? Like configuring them all with component models and definitions. We said, let's give you, let's configure it to open in Universal Editor. And then let's have you work in DA for a while. And then let's talk about a next step of maybe you want to consider you really do need or want Universal Editor editing on top of what you have in DA, and we can look at configuring those blocks to support that.
Yep. Instrumenting all your
blocks.
blocks.
Yeah, instrumenting the blocks, right.
Yeah, like it's not critical path to support all of your blocks on Universal Editor. Like get live on DA first with document-based authoring, and then you can roll out a second phase, which doing it is simple on its own. It's just a bit more tedious work to do it, but just get live on DA first with document-based authoring, and then you can roll out your UE instrumentation later on.
It's interesting you all are going down that path, because I know of another project that is doing the exact same, and I know for sure you two have not talked, and so it's interesting to see this pattern, because it is, when we talk about edge delivery services, the original pitch was fastest to author, fastest to develop for, and fastest site speed. If you do take those dependencies, we know this from the AEM days, making a WYSIWYG editor happy is work. It's extra work.
Yep.
It's not a simple table, and so there's always pros and cons, where it's like, yeah, you get this really great interface which is maybe a little bit more guided for your novice authors or your authors that maybe are a little scared of tables, but it is work. So let's get you on here. It gets you that stable platform, and then you can dip your toes into that world, right, and see if you like it. It's great.
Yeah, because I don't know if we mentioned it, Eric, but this was kind of a phase one of a two-phase project where as soon as we got onto DA, we migrated some different language sites that had never gotten onto EDS to DA. So we wanted to get to DA first, and then actually we stood up Canadian, French, and English sites for them next. That could be another talk. We ran into some things there, but this was kind of a step one.
Right.
Right. I think that's it. The only other thing I wanted to mention is just kind of a note that because we were keeping the forms in SharePoint, we quickly discovered that when the client was previewing in DA, I should say on the EDS sort of preview URLs, the forms were not loading. And we basically had to go in and and they really wanted that. They didn't accept that, like when we're in EDS, unless we're on our custom domains, we wouldn't see our forms, that kind of thing. So we had to do some CORS adjustment, I think on the CDN, Eric, I'm guessing, to allow, and we had to I think we had to write some JavaScript to kind of know which environment we were in and pull the forms from the right place. That was a little bit of like a late in the project discovery that we quickly had to solve for. And I just throw it out there as I don't know if this was a common use case enough to make a big deal out of it, but it's something we hit. If folks stay with things in SharePoint and DA, that could be an issue. Yeah. I probably got Chris's gears turning in his head. But
No, this is great. No, I what I was thinking of is your use case is dangerously close to the libs architecture that we built for Adobe.com, in that we have a central repository that provides, think of it as like a modern core components almost specifically for Adobe.com, and that all resides on one project. And then we have these sub projects. A lot of customers will do like repo lists, and they'll try to like sort of use one repository to solve all of these projects. And then all of a sudden you have 100 PRs for all these like 5 projects going into the one. And so when we did Adobe.com, we had this where we were like, okay, what's the best way to have this central repository that can be client-side loaded, and it's evergreen, right? So we're not versioning and NPM packages and trying to like glue GitHub repos and actions together. We're not doing any of that, which is very similar to what you did, except for you just had like kind of your forms-based library, right? You have your forms project is over here that you need to talk to, so you do need to do those things for CORS. It's great.
That's it, Eric. I'm going to send it back to you. Is that cool?
Yeah.
All right, let me stop sharing.
Got a couple more things to run through here. Let me share my screen. I'm going to breeze through this a little bit just so we can have enough time for questions at the end. So when it comes to go live, for us, the launch went very smoothly. We did not have any downtime of the site during the cutover. And we saw that there were two different ways to approach the cutover. One scenario is to keep all of your code changes backward compatible with the SharePoint site and continuously merge your changes into the main branch. And this provides a simple cutover process because everything's backward compatible. The other approach that we saw is you can keep all of your changes in a dedicated branch. Let's say we have a branch called DA, and you continuously sync that branch with the main branch in case you have other developers pushing to main while you're still doing this migration project. And during cutover, you can temporarily point to that DA branch. And we chose this option because we felt like it required less code. We didn't have to have any backward compatible code to maintain, and therefore it was just less scenarios to test. So that was the option that we chose, but either approach can ultimately work.
Fun fact. We moved DA.live itself in late January, basically like January 26th or 7th. And we did exactly this approach. We had branches and we temporarily pointed, we had what we called infra branches, and we pointed our new CDN and our new infrastructure to those infra branches, and we could kind of compare, like if we saw a bug, we would say, oh, is this our branch or is it, and we could immediately go back to the other one. We were live on those infra branches for maybe like a week, and then we just got those merged back into main, and we were good. So I love that we got to steal this idea accidentally from you. So this is cool.
Love it. Yeah, it's a proven method. It works. And this is quite literally what our cutover plan looked like. I don't have to bore you all with the details by reading each bullet point here, but essentially, Chris, that idea of like pointing to that temporary branch for your production site, we just had a strong note here that says like, don't delete that temporary branch at all. Otherwise your site will be broken because that branch is serving the code from your site.
Yeah.
But essentially, as you're going through the motions of the cutover plan on the day of go live, then you can eventually merge that temporary branch into main, do a quick smoke test of the main origin, and then again, you can update your CDN configs to point back to the main branch for all of your DA paths. You know, for us, we still had a couple of paths pointing to the SharePoint instance for all of our forms. And then by that point, the site is all live on DA, referencing the main branch for everything. And then you can safely delete that temporary branch after that. And in our case, just one more point I want to call out, like since we're using AEM's Fastly CDN that comes with your AEM sites license, there shouldn't be a need for like any manual CDN cache purge. At least that's not what we observed. It automatically purges the cache whenever you deploy a CDN config through Cloud Manager. So just one more thing to help you out there.
So I'm curious, knowing that fast purge, so the push invalidation that's available with AEM, and query index, sitemap is another one. These configurations really only kind of respect the main branch, right? Did you have any problems with that, like during the go live process, because you were on this DA branch that's not technically blessed to have different configurations for sitemap, query index, cache invalidation, or was it like your cutover was so fast between main and DA branches that it didn't really impact anything?
Yeah, we didn't have any issues like that. Like these cutover plan steps that you see on the screen here, which feel free to take a screenshot or pause the recording to look deeper into it. But we all executed this within a matter of a couple of minutes. So it did all happen fast. We did not spend a couple of days in that sort of interim state.
Got it. Okay, that's great.
Yep. So that was essentially it. Just a couple notes on the project timeline. It was about 1 to 2 weeks of planning, 2 to 3 weeks of actual execution, which includes dev and QA and client UAT. A couple notes on what's next for Shred-it. We were kind of already alluding to some of this. We'd like to add more universal editor support for all of their blocks. We'd like to move some of their forms or all of their forms off of SharePoint entirely and bring that into the universal editor. And as Sean was mentioning earlier, we are migrating more of their regional sites from classic AEM Cloud over to Edge Delivery. As Sean was saying, we already migrated the Canada English and Canada French sites onto Edge Delivery using DA. Those also just went live a couple of weeks ago. And as part of that, it was interesting. We were using DA's localization features to roll out some pages from ENUS into the Canada folders. There were some gotchas we encountered with that. Nothing wrong with DA's localization features, but the content itself, we encountered about 100 or 200 pages had page metadata that still had ENUS specific content in them, and was still the case even when they were rolled out into the Canada folders. So we wanted a way to bulk update the page metadata across 100 or 200 pages so that we didn't have to do it manually. So to do that, we built our DA app here using the DA SDK as well as some of the Superlight components on the UI side. And we're calling this our block updater. It's more accurately, it's a metadata block updater. It was built for our specific use case of bulk updating metadata blocks. But in theory, this could be extended to work with any block that you want to bulk update across the site. The idea here is that you provide a root path of the site you want to update. You can provide an operation. Like let's say we want to modify an existing metadata key. In our case, we had this locale metadata key that was entered into each metadata block on each page, pointing to ENUS. We had to change that to something else. I'll just go ahead and select the random value here. We can hit dry run. So this is going to invoke the DA SDK to traverse that tree, find a list of all files that have that matching metadata. And for each path, you can see the metadata block for that page and give you a nice little diff view here of what the current value is and what the value after that will be. So we use this to bulk update the locale. Another option is we can just bulk delete this entirely and just use bulk metadata spreadsheet. That's probably more of a maintainable approach. So we have the option to just delete that entirely. Again, I'll just select delete row, dry run, gives you that similar diff view of what's being deleted across all of these pages. Or we can also just add new rows. I'll just say test, hello, and as you would expect, another diff view with that value being added. So just a neat little tool that kind of helped us avoid some manual work.
I know so many people that if they saw this, they would just have tears of envy. So we may have to try and get this. We may have to beg you for bubbling this up as a contribution into
Happy to
Nexter, because I mean even just seeing this would be so wildly useful as a first class DA app that folks could use. So the dry run and everything is great. Using Superlight obviously fits right in. So yeah, we should talk after this call.
Yeah, let's do it. Happy to be a contributor. It's a great tool. I agree. Let's do it. Great. Let's close it out here with a couple of customer quotes. So our customer, he said he loves the ease in authoring in DA. The process of updating pages is much faster and simpler. It's the fastest CMS he has ever seen. For example, he rebuilt 50 pages from scratch in 3 days, which was unheard of for him and his team. This last one might be a little controversial, but he prefers this tool over the traditional AEM Sites browser. So it's really been a game changer for him and his team. So very happy to enable that for him. And that's it. Again, we strongly encourage doing the upgrade. It's, as you can see, it's not that complex. And all the documentation on docs.da.live is a great place to get started. So thanks for listening in.
That's great. Well, thanks, Eric and Sean.
Super. Thanks a lot. Let's put out some questions. I think there are 3 questions, and then I have 2 points to mention.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got Tim who wants to know a little bit more about multi-language. So if you guys can share a little bit.
Yeah, so for Shreddit specifically, it is multi-language. So we started with ENUS, and then we had a second phase of the project to bring over their Canada English and Canada French sites. So in our case, the translations were already there. We're just migrating content as is. So we didn't actually have to go through any translation workflows since we're just migrating content as is. But maybe Chris, if you want to speak to some of the translation capabilities that
I can speak more broadly. So DA does support any sort of flavor of localization you want. So you can have a purely language-based site, which we mostly recommend for most sort of brochure sites. If you have a commerce site where you have SKUs and VAT, you might want to go for a locale-based approach so you can have those regionally specific SKUs and tax rates and whatnot. Or you can do hybrid. We see a lot of that where maybe you want to be mostly language, but you want to dip in. Maybe you have some events for a specific region or something like that. Maybe you want to do that. As far as like and it can be multi-language, multi-site. So you could do .ch if you want to have a Swiss site. There's nothing stopping you from that. Most companies have kind of leaned towards staying on a single domain just because of the SEO implications there. Even Google itself has moved to that. So google.com, you're going to get surfaced up German and whatnot. But you can have multi-domain sites. And yeah, you can mix and match. You can do from a pure process perspective. All of DA's connectors support. You get Google's neural machine translation out of the box. If you literally touch nothing and you just spin up a DA site using the aem-live tutorial, you can localize a page. Like you can go from I've written nothing, I'm just gonna go get back from lunch and decide to poke at this. You can have a translated site in about 5 minutes with the demo content. You're responsible for making your own content. But so machine translation from Google Translate, and then our other connectors support LLM-based transcreation. Transcreation in LLM is like a particularly exciting innovation that's come out because if you do have those, like Adobe.com is the most famous example. We were getting beat up from Google over. We would have technically speaking, we have a Swiss German site, but there's nothing regionally specific about it. It's just like basically a German copy. With LLMs, you can now make those investments to actually have regionally specific. So it sounds like a Swiss person is actually writing the pages, because normally you wouldn't invest in a human to do there's just not enough great Swiss Germans out there in the world, in my opinion, to do all the translations. But you can have an LLM do it, and so it's really great. So we used to do things, we call it like alternative languages. So like it's not just English, but it's like British English. So you get a couple extra U's. But now like with LLMs, you can do that. So hopefully that answers. And there's a ton of documentation. I'll add some links in the comments that explains all the different approaches to localization on DA.
Right on. That was great. Okay. So we've got a question from Artem. So migration from DA in commerce to UE in commerce. What do those steps look like?
Let's see, 30 components, 100 pages. So for us, what we thought worked best, and just for the sake of getting on DA sooner, is sticking with document-based authoring first and bringing that over to DA. And then as a second step, we're considering instrumenting all of our blocks for universal editor integration specifically. So that's how I would approach it. I don't think there's a need for having to do all the UE instrumentation up front, unless I'm missing something. But that would be my general recommendation.
Okay, and then the follow-up question is, so about UE component. So is there an automatic way for component migration? I mean, you guys talked a little bit about kind of the not wanting to set up kind of all the model and for all of your blocks, but yeah, is there any, Chris, anything coming?
No. Well, yes and no. So we know that this is a pain point. We know that this is additional friction. We feel this too. We make universal editor sites. I would say like this is self-serving, so just in Adobe's a big place with a lot of different opinions. When you have a crosswalk site, so that's UE on top of AEM or UE on top of JCR, you have there's some interesting behaviors with like cell collapsing and things that you might have to do. So if you're trying to go from like a doc-based site to a pure AEM and UE, or what I would call a crosswalk site, you'll have more of a lift versus if you go from a doc-based site to DA and then you put UE on top, because UE being that true universal editor, it really, that name actually is very correct, because all the underlying information architecture of your blocks and your content and everything is still intact. You just get that sort of guided authoring experience. And so the delta between doc-based and crosswalk is quite large, where the delta between doc-based and UE plus DA is actually quite small. You do have to build those models and all of that, because you are signing up. You're saying, hey, I want these strong types. I want to force my author to write in that date field. And so since you want those features, you're on the hook to build in those validations.
All right, that was great. Okay, and then one last one. Is there a kind of docs boilerplate example on how to build apps like Huge own?
Yeah, we've got a lot. Maybe I can do a quick share with. Let's see if this will work. Share screen. Let's see if I can do. Oh, it's not gonna let me.
It's not gonna work, is it? Yeah, we did do this beforehand.
Totally
next time.
But I'll add some of the documentation. We do have really comprehensive documentation on how to make apps and plugins. And again, hopefully Eric can keep me at my word, which is they should be accurate, and you should be able to just copy the examples and go.
Yep, and the SDK, it's all again just vanilla JavaScript. So use your coding assistant if you have to. We certainly did. It's a great use case for that, especially for one-time migration tools. It's not hard to create your own custom app like I was showing earlier.
Right on. That's great. Good insight. All right. So I think that was it for questions. We are almost at time. So thanks for joining.
Maybe you can put mine in there.
You want me to throw yours up?
Yes.
Okay. So.
Yeah, exactly. So we have a new tutorial. No, we have an acceleration for the tutorial because there is a pre-built environment. So you can go to this site, jump to this link, and here, thank you for showing it. So this is then much easier because you get a fully configured, ready-to-use environment, and that will definitely streamline your experience. This is the first thing I want to say, because we will have a session. We are planning it, so in 2-3 weeks we have to fix the date, so we are not done. So that's why you will not find it on the website. And a second session is also in the planning. Is a session with Tim Lavelle. Can we also put that up?
No.
Wow.
There
cool.
You go. Look at that.
Actually, exactly. Yes. I did it. No, because he wrote a blog on Medium about talking about the mental shift teams need to do when they go to the edge. So you can read this blog, and we are talking to him also to have something in October. To have a nice chat here again on YouTube. That would be great. So this is from my side.
Awesome.
And thanks a lot.
Yeah, and then the last thing, we've got Developers Live coming up here in November.
Woo!
So hopefully we've got folks signing up for Developers Live in San Jose. And that will be the 10th, 11th, and then 12th around the world. So definitely check that out on aem.live/developers-live. I didn't get a banner
exactly. And 24 hours means we are shooting around the world from San Jose to Sydney to Bangalore and then to Basel. Switzerland, Chris, Switzerland. And then we
Yeah.
translate it to Swiss German.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
There we
Super.
go. Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. It was
Thanks a lot.
fantastic content.
Thank you very much.
So
Thank you.
thanks for sharing.
Thank you all.
Thanks for
Okay.
watching.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Have a great day.
Enjoy the evening today. Bye-bye.
Bye.